an endless abyss, silent, indifferent, and yet it holds our greatest ambitions and our deepest fears. Long before humanity set foot on the moon, there were those who dared to slip the bonds of Earth in secrecy, vanishing into the void with no record of their fate. The world was told of Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. But was he truly the first? In the shadows of the Cold War, beneath the iron grip of Soviet secrecy, a chilling mystery lingers. Did cosmonauts perish in space before history was ready to remember them? And if so, what became of them? Tonight, we uncover the whispered transmissions, the secret radio signals, and the haunting evidence that suggests the Soviet Union sent men beyond Earth's grasp, only to erase them from existence. This is the Forgotten Frontiers. Before the world watched Neil Armstrong step onto the moon, before Yuri Gagarin was hailed as the first man in space, there were others. Men whose names were never recorded, voices lost in the void, their fates erased by the iron grip of Soviet secrecy. Were they the first pioneers of the cosmos, or the first victims? The Cold War was more than an arms race. It was a war for the cosmos. By the late 1950s, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a feverish battle to dominate space. The Soviet Union, under Premier Nikita Khrushchev, was determined to prove its superiority, pushing its scientists and cosmonauts beyond human limits. October 4th, 1957, the launch of Sputnik 1 sent shockwaves across the world. A tiny beeping satellite, no larger than a basketball, had made humanity an interstellar species. The Soviet Union had taken the lead. In response, the United States scrambled to launch Project Mercury. But what followed was an increasingly ruthless race where failure was not an option. For the Americans, failure meant public humiliation. For the Soviets, failure was buried, rewritten, erased. The world only saw the triumphs. But history tells a different story. History remembers Yuri Gagarin as the first man in space. But whispers from within Soviet intelligence tell of others, those who came before him and never returned. Soviet records state that Yuri Gagarin's flight on April 12, 1961, aboard Vostok 1 was the first successful human spaceflight. But in the years leading up to Gagarin's mission, rumors began to swirl. What of those who flew before him? If they succeeded, why were they forgotten? If they failed, what became of them? The official Soviet stance? There were no failed attempts, but declassified KGB documents and defectors tell a different story, one of vanished cosmonauts, of erased identities, of chilling transmissions that seemed to come from the grave. In 1960, two Italian brothers, Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia, were amateur radio operators stationed in Torre Bere, a small listening station outside Turin, Italy. Their setup was modest, but sophisticated enough to pick up signals from Soviet spacecraft. At first, they intercepted the expected, signals from Sputnik and Vostok probes. But then, something else. On November 28, 1960, the brothers picked up a chilling signal, a heartbeat-like beep, the kind used to monitor vital signs. Then, a voice, a cosmonaut breathing heavily, seemingly in distress. The words, barely decipherable, translated to, "I am hot. I am going to re-enter, but I am burning up." Then, silence. The Soviets never acknowledged a failed mission on this date. But was this the last transmission of a doomed cosmonaut, falling helplessly back to Earth, lost to fire and secrecy? Even before Gagarin's historic flight, another name floated in the shadows, Vladimir Ilyushin. A decorated Soviet test pilot, Ilyushin was rumored to have been launched into space on April 7, 1961, just days before Gagarin's supposed first flight. According to Western intelligence sources, the mission went terribly wrong. Ilyushin allegedly crash-landed in China, surviving but in critical condition. The Soviets, unwilling to admit failure, reportedly covered up the mission, hiding Ilyushin in a Chinese hospital while Gagarin took the spotlight. The official Soviet statement? Ilyushin had been in a car accident. But skeptics argue, why would a high-ranking test pilot on the verge of a space mission be out driving recklessly just before the biggest moment in Soviet history? The inconsistencies only deepened the mystery. For every confirmed cosmonaut, how many were left behind? How many were lost to silence, their names never recorded, their fates whispered only in the corridors of Soviet power? More intercepted recordings surfaced in the years following Gagarin's flight. February 1961. The Torre station reportedly picked up the sounds of a cosmonaut gasping for air, as if oxygen was running out. May 1961. A chilling exchange in Russian. One voice calm and official, the other pleading, "This flight is not ending well." October 1962. What sounded like a woman's voice, sobbing, repeating the words, "I am alone. I am losing control." There are no official records of these missions, but some believe that the Soviet Union launched early space flights that went horribly wrong and simply erased them from history. As the world celebrated Yuri Gagarin's triumph, how many others had been sacrificed to reach that moment? "I am hot, I'm going to re-enter." There was panic in the voice, a creeping realization that something had gone terribly wrong. The brothers listened, frozen, as the voice became weaker, overtaken by a growing silence. Then a final plea, an unfinished sentence, before the transmission cut off completely. For a moment, the brothers stared at each other. They knew what they had heard. It wasn't a routine communication. This was a distress call, a desperate cry from the void. But if a cosmonaut had been in trouble, why was there no official record of the mission? The Soviet Union, meticulous in its control of information, had never announced a launch. Yet, here was a voice, alone in space, speaking in agony. The Giudica Cordiglia brothers continued to listen in the coming months. What they captured next only deepened the mystery. A heartbeat, not a human voice, but a slow, rhythmic thumping. The sound of life, fading. Then, another transmission. "Why don't you answer? We are losing. Transmission lost." The voice was barely above a whisper, then static. The Italian brothers took their findings to the press, but they were dismissed by officials. The Soviet Union had no record of lost cosmonauts, no failed missions that matched these dates. Yet, the brothers were not the only ones who had heard the whispers. Other radio operators in different parts of the world had intercepted similar signals. Faint, broken cries in the darkness, whispers of figures who had ventured beyond Earth and never returned. The official Soviet timeline told a different story. The world knew of Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, who successfully orbited the Earth in 1961. But what if he wasn't the first? What if he was simply the first they could not erase? In the years that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed that at least 3 cosmonauts had perished in secret Soviet launches before Gagarin's historic flight. Others whispered of failed rescue attempts, of astronauts suffocating in their suits as their oxygen ran dry. The Soviets never acknowledged these transmissions. To them, space was an arena of national pride, where failure was not an option. A lost cosmonaut was a ghost, unseen, unspoken, erased from history. But some believe the truth lingers in the static, in the unexplained transmissions that slip through the frequencies even today. Whispers from the void, waiting to be heard. The question remains, if the Soviet Union was willing to rewrite history, how many voices were lost in the silence? And if we listened closely enough, could we still hear them? In the 1950s and 60s, the Soviet Union was the undisputed leader in space exploration. The successful launch of Sputnik in 1957 sent a clear message. The Soviets had taken the first step into the cosmos. The Americans scrambled to keep up, but the Soviet program remained an enigma, shrouded in secrecy. Every triumph was celebrated on the world stage, yet every failure was buried under a mountain of classified documents. The Soviet leadership understood that space was not just about exploration. It was a battleground for ideological dominance. In the West, NASA's successes and failures were broadcasted in real time, with television crews documenting every launch, every setback, and every tragedy. But in the Soviet Union, failure was a stain on the fabric of communist supremacy. The space program was as much a political tool as it was a scientific endeavor. Cosmonauts were heroes, symbols of Soviet ingenuity and resilience, and their public image was carefully crafted. Their missions were announced only after they had been completed successfully. But what happened when a mission went wrong? What happened to those who never returned? As the Soviets pushed further into space, rumors of missing cosmonauts began to surface. It started subtly: hushed whispers, unexplained delays, and redacted mission reports. Occasionally, a cosmonaut's name would vanish from official records as if they had never existed. Families of these vanished cosmonauts were silenced, coerced, or simply told to move on. One of the most infamous cases is that of Vladimir Ilyushin, a highly decorated Soviet test pilot and the son of a prominent aircraft designer. In 1961, just days before Yuri Gagarin's historic flight, rumors began circulating that Ilyushin had actually been the first man in space. But his mission had gone horribly wrong. According to unconfirmed reports, Ilyushin's re-entry vehicle had malfunctioned, and he crash-landed in China, critically injured. The Soviets, unwilling to admit such a catastrophic failure, covered up the mission and denied any involvement. Ilyushin was reportedly kept in isolation for months before being quietly returned to the USSR. When asked about the allegations, Soviet officials dismissed them as Western propaganda. But if Ilyushin's story was a fabrication, why did his name suddenly disappear from Soviet spaceflight records? Why did he retreat from public life and never speak about the incident? The silence spoke volumes. Then there was the case of Alexei Ledov, a name almost entirely erased from history. Ledov was reportedly one of the early cosmonaut trainees, assigned to a high-risk orbital mission in the early 1960s. According to unverified reports, he was launched into orbit aboard an experimental spacecraft, but a failure in the re-entry mechanism left him stranded in space. The Soviets, realizing they had no way to rescue him, made no announcement. Instead, Ledov allegedly drifted in orbit for days before his oxygen supply ran out. Some say his spacecraft still circles the Earth, a silent tomb lost among the stars. Though his name was never acknowledged by the Soviet government, grainy, unofficial photographs of cosmonaut training programs occasionally feature a man resembling Ledov. Yet he never appears in any official Soviet cosmonaut rosters. Was he real? Was his fate one of tragic obscurity, erased by the meticulous hand of the Soviet state? Even more disturbing were the rumors of Sergei Shibarin, another forgotten name. In 1960, an American intelligence source claimed that a Soviet cosmonaut had died during a suborbital test flight. His rocket reportedly suffered a catastrophic failure, causing it to plummet back to Earth. Unlike Ledov, Shibarin never made it to orbit. His spacecraft burned up upon re-entry, turning him into nothing more than a fleeting radio transmission. Western intelligence analysts, scouring Soviet broadcasts for signals, picked up what they believed to be a distress call in Russian, one that mentioned a rapidly failing spacecraft and a desperate plea for assistance. Within days, the transmission ceased. The Soviets never acknowledged the incident. If these cosmonauts existed, why do we have so little evidence? The answer lies with the KGB, the Soviet Union's omnipresent intelligence agency. The KGB maintained a vice-like grip on all information related to the space program, ensuring that nothing but success was shared with the world. Any missions that ended in failure were wiped from the record, sometimes literally. When Western journalists or intelligence agencies got too close to the truth, they were met with calculated misinformation campaigns. Photographs were altered, official logs were rewritten, and witnesses were silenced. If a cosmonaut perished in space, their family members were often sworn to secrecy or coerced into publicly denying the existence of their loved one's mission. The KGB also targeted defectors, scientists and engineers who had worked within the space program but had fled to the West. Some of these individuals later recounted stories of failed launches, lost cosmonauts, and entire programs abandoned due to their high mortality rates. One such defector, a former Soviet engineer named Mikhail Rudenko, claimed that there were at least 3 unsuccessful manned spaceflights before Gagarin's historic journey. He alleged that these cosmonauts were sent on high-risk test missions, knowing full well that they were unlikely to survive. The Soviet Union, he said, was desperate to prove its superiority in space, even if it meant sacrificing its own heroes. Not all tragedies could be erased. In 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Valentin Bondarenko died during a routine training exercise in an oxygen-rich chamber. A simple mistake, accidentally dropping an alcohol-soaked cloth onto a heating plate, set off a devastating fire. Bondarenko suffered horrific burns, dying hours later in agony. But his death was not announced. Instead, the Soviets erased his name from official records. His photograph was removed from cosmonaut group pictures. It wasn't until 1986, decades after the fall of the Soviet Union, that his fate was finally acknowledged. If a cosmonaut who perished in a training accident was so thoroughly erased, what lengths would the Soviets go to in covering up spaceflight failures? The stories of these missing cosmonauts, real or imagined, speak to a larger truth about the Soviet space program. It was a program built on ambition, secrecy, and sacrifice. The names of Gagarin, Tereshkova, and Leonov are remembered as pioneers, but how many others were lost in the shadows, their sacrifices unrecognized? Even today, with the declassification of Soviet records and the collapse of the USSR, questions remain. Were there truly cosmonauts who perished in space, their names erased? Were the Judica Cordiglia brothers telling the truth, or were their recordings elaborate hoaxes? Or perhaps, somewhere in the cold, dark silence of space, there are echoes of voices lost to time, whispers of those who ventured too far and never returned. As the space race raged on, the Soviet Union continued launching mission after mission, keeping a tight grip on secrecy. Failures were buried, while only triumphs were paraded before the world. But for those who listened, truly listened, there was an unsettling truth in the static of deep space. Following the distressing recordings by the Giudica Cordiglia brothers, rumors of lost cosmonauts refused to fade. Several journalists and researchers dug deeper, attempting to confirm if these mysterious voices had indeed belonged to doomed Soviet astronauts. But the more they uncovered, the more the Soviet Union tightened its grip on classified records. One of the most chilling accounts came from a former high-ranking Soviet engineer who, years after the fall of the USSR, claimed that multiple cosmonauts had perished in early missions that were never recorded in official documents. His testimony described rushed launches, lethal malfunctions, and radio transmissions that were swiftly silenced. In 1972, an anonymous Soviet informant claimed that at least 6 cosmonauts had died in space-related incidents before Gagarin's flight. The informant, a former KGB officer, alleged that the bodies of these lost astronauts were never recovered. Some were said to have burned up in the atmosphere during botched re-entries, while others had become silent, floating tombs drifting endlessly in orbit. Declassified documents from the post-Soviet era later confirmed that at least 4 high-profile Soviet space missions had been erased from official history. However, these files contained no explicit mention of cosmonaut deaths. The truth remained elusive. Fragments of information, hints of a cover-up, but never enough to piece together a complete story. The greatest hurdle in confirming the lost cosmonauts theory remains the lack of physical evidence. No official Soviet records exist to confirm these tragedies. No human remains, no wreckage, no definitive proof. Yet something deeply unsettling lingers in the silence of space, and those eerie radio transmissions continue to haunt historians and researchers alike. To this day, skeptics challenge the legitimacy of the Giudica Cordiglia recordings. Some claim that the Italian brothers, eager for fame, may have fabricated the signals. Others argue that even if the recordings were real, they could have been misinterpretations of routine Soviet transmissions, garbled voices distorted by radio interference. But there is one final, haunting piece of the puzzle. In 1963, the brothers claimed to have recorded one last Soviet distress call. This time, the message wasn't coming from a cosmonaut struggling to survive. It was a cosmonaut drifting helplessly into deep space. The voice was weak, barely audible over the static. "I am alone. I can see the Earth. It is so far away. I will not return." The transmission ended abruptly. There was no re-entry, no official announcement of a lost cosmonaut, no name attached to this tragic farewell. If this voice was real, it belonged to someone the world was never meant to know. If any lost cosmonauts were indeed launched into space, never to return, their bodies would likely still be orbiting Earth today. Given the longevity of objects in low Earth orbit, the remains of a doomed astronaut could persist for decades, if not centuries, before re-entering the atmosphere and disintegrating. Some researchers believe that military satellites or classified spacecraft may have unknowingly captured images of drifting capsules, silent tombs, frozen in time. However, no official acknowledgement has ever been made. NASA and other international space agencies have never publicly confirmed the presence of unidentified manned objects in Earth's orbit. But with tens of thousands of pieces of space debris constantly monitored, could it be possible that the remnants of a lost Soviet mission are among them? As decades have passed, the story of the lost cosmonauts has cemented itself into both space history and conspiracy lore. The Soviet Union may have collapsed, but its secrets remain buried in the ruins of classified cosmonauts may have perished in the silence of space, there exists another enigma, one that has lingered in orbit for decades, eluding identification, defying logic. A relic or a warning? This is the mystery of the Black Knight satellite. High above our blue planet, amidst the boundless darkness of space, a secret has long stirred both wonder and unease. This is the story of the Black Knight satellite, a mysterious, spectral presence whose origins and purpose have challenged our understanding of what may lurk in the void. For decades, whispers of an unexplained object orbiting Earth have captured the imaginations of scientists, conspiracy theorists, and dreamers alike. Tonight we begin our journey into this cosmic enigma, exploring its murky origins, the clues that have surfaced over time, and the eerie evidence that continues to haunt the annals of space exploration. Our tale begins in an era when the line between science and myth was far less defined. In the late 19th century, long before satellites graced our skies, one visionary in particular, Nikola Tesla, claimed to have intercepted strange signals from the cosmos. Tesla's experiments with radio waves hinted at communication from far beyond our terrestrial confines. Though his observations were enigmatic and never fully understood, they planted the seeds for a legend that would grow in the fertile soil of human curiosity and the unyielding desire to discover the unknown. As the world entered the early 1900s, technological innovations surged, and humanity's gaze turned upward. With the advent of radio and the first primitive rockets, the promise of space travel ignited imaginations. Against this backdrop of scientific progress, sporadic reports of unexplained signals began to emerge. Early radio enthusiasts and amateur astronomers detected anomalous transmissions, faint whispers that defied explanation. While many dismissed these as the product of atmospheric interference or faulty equipment, others wondered if these were the first tentative communications from a presence not of this Earth. The mystery took on new dimensions during the Cold War. The frenetic pace of the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union led to an unprecedented proliferation of satellites and deep space probes. As nations scrambled to master the heavens, early radar installations began picking up signals and images that defied easy classification. Among the flurry of human-made objects, spent rocket stages, discarded thermal blankets, and experimental crafts. Some radar echoes and grainy photographs hinted at something altogether different. An object described as dark, angular, and seemingly out of place emerged from the background clutter of space debris. To some, it was merely a misidentified fragment of technology. To others, it was evidence of a deliberate, unknown presence, a silent guardian lurking in the void. In the midst of these early investigations, a pattern began to emerge. Military technicians and civilian researchers alike noted that certain signals recurred over time, following orbital paths that did not match any known satellite or piece of space junk. The notion of an alien satellite, a craft not of human design, was a tantalizing possibility. Was it possible that long before our current era of space exploration, an advanced civilization had already left its mark upon our orbit? This question, imbued with equal parts scientific curiosity and primal fear, laid the groundwork for the legend of the Black Knight. Archival documents and declassified images from the early days of the space age further fueled the debate. In one widely circulated photograph, a dark, indistinct object is seen drifting against a backdrop of countless stars, a ghostly silhouette that defied explanation. Critics argued that such images could easily be dismissed as artifacts of low-resolution cameras or reflections off stray pieces of debris. Yet for those captivated by the mystery, every ambiguous signal, every shadowy figure, was a piece of a puzzle that hinted at a far grander narrative. Interviews with retired engineers and early space program veterans recalled moments of unease, a sense that sometimes the data just didn't add up. One veteran, his voice barely above a whisper, recalled a time when radar readings suggested a deliberate, almost intelligent pattern in the clutter of near-Earth objects. It was as if the object was watching us, or perhaps even recording our progress, he confided. As our understanding of space evolved, so too did the tools used to observe it. Advances in radar technology, high-resolution imaging, and orbital tracking have allowed modern scientists to catalogue thousands of objects circling our planet. Many of the anomalies that once spurred wild speculation have been reclassified as natural or human-made phenomena. Yet, the Black Knight satellite stubbornly defies complete explanation. Some of the signals associated with it appear to follow a periodic pattern, a subtle dance that hints at intentionality rather than random chance. The possibility that these observations could represent an object deliberately placed in orbit, either as a relic of ancient contact or as an autonomous sentinel, continues to provoke heated debates among experts. It is in this interplay between technology and mystery that the legend of the Black Knight satellite takes on its most compelling form. On one side stand the skeptics, armed with improved data and rigorous scientific models, who argue that every anomaly can be explained by the chaotic nature of space debris and the limitations of early detection methods. On the other side, the believers, inspired by decades of unexplained signals and the allure of the unknown, maintain that something extraordinary may be at work, a presence that has observed our planet's evolution from the shadows of the cosmos. As you join us in this exploration, consider the profound implications of our search for truth in the dark expanses above. Every unexplained blip, every faint echo captured by our instruments, invites us to question not only what we see, but also what we might be missing. Could it be that in our relentless march toward technological mastery, we have overlooked a silent witness, a relic of a bygone era, or a message from a civilization long past? Dark, angular silhouette drifting against a starry canvas. A figure that, despite the limitations of primitive equipment, stirred a sense of unease. One retired radar operator described the experience vividly. There were nights when we'd see a pattern emerge on our screens, one that wasn't part of our catalogued debris. It was as if something was deliberately there, watching. Declassified documents from the Cold War era have since shed light on these early observations. Grainy photographs, recovered from military archives, occasionally show a shadowy object against the infinite backdrop of space. Critics argue that these images can be dismissed as artifacts, misfired snapshots of thermal blankets, defunct rocket parts, or even reflections off stray pieces of space junk. However, for many who have studied these records, a persistent question remains. Can all these anomalies be neatly explained away by technological glitches and human error? The answer is not entirely clear. As the decades rolled on, improved radar systems and high-resolution imaging technologies allowed for more precise tracking of near-Earth objects. Scientists began using sophisticated computer models to simulate the complex dynamics of objects in orbit. These models, based on our best understanding of orbital mechanics, successfully explained much of the clutter in Earth's orbital environment. Yet even with these advances, a handful of data points stubbornly resisted categorization. Some signals appeared with a periodicity that suggested intentionality rather than random chance. In a realm where every object should follow predictable paths dictated by gravity, these recurring anomalies hint at a possibility that the object in question might be more than mere debris. One particularly puzzling element of the evidence lies in the recorded radio transmissions from the 1960s. Amid a cacophony of human-made signals, researchers identified a series of intermittent radio bursts that seemed to emanate from a consistent source in orbit. These signals, when plotted over time, appeared to have a repetitive structure, a coded rhythm that some interpreted as a deliberate communication attempt. Mainstream scientists have largely attributed these transmissions to interference or the complex interplay of multiple radio sources, but for a dedicated subset of researchers, the possibility of a non-terrestrial origin remains tantalizing. Further complicating the matter, modern observations have occasionally captured images of a faint, dark object in a similar orbit. These modern datasets, gathered by satellites with advanced sensors, offer a level of clarity that early images could not. Yet even with today's technology, the object, if it is indeed the same as the one observed decades ago, remains elusive. Its appearance is often ambiguous, a mere smudge against the endless void, a shape that shifts with the observer's angle and the play of light. Detailed analyses suggest that such an object could easily be mistaken for common space debris, yet the consistency of its reported characteristics over time adds a layer of mystery that continues to fuel debate. In interviews, veteran aerospace engineers recall the moments of both frustration and wonder. Dr. Robert Michaels, a retired engineer from a prominent space agency, recalls a particular instance during routine tracking. "We were monitoring a cluster of objects when one reading caught our eye. It wasn't on any of our charts. At first we assumed it was a sensor error, but then the signal reappeared time and again, following an orbit that defied our models. Even with all our modern tools, that reading still makes us question what we're really looking at." His recollections echo those of many who worked on the front lines of early satellite tracking, moments when the boundary between known technology and the inexplicable seemed to blur. The prevailing debate among experts centers on the interpretation of these anomalies. Many argue that the object's unusual characteristics can be accounted for by the erratic behavior of early tracking systems and the chaotic nature of space debris. Pieces of defunct technology, from lost thermal insulation to discarded payload components, can, under the right conditions, produce the very signals that were once attributed to a mysterious, deliberate presence. In the harsh environment of low Earth orbit, where objects collide and fragment, it is not uncommon for unexpected reflections and errant signals to arise. Yet, for every explanation rooted in mundane human error, there is a counter-argument that keeps the possibility of something extraordinary alive. A group of independent researchers maintains that the consistent orbital parameters and the recurring structured radio bursts suggest a degree of intentionality. They propose that the object may not be a fluke of human technology at all, but rather a relic, either an abandoned artifact of a forgotten era of space exploration, or even an emissary from an ancient non-terrestrial civilization. This view, while controversial, is not without its adherents, many of whom point to the enduring enigma as evidence that our understanding of near-Earth space is far from complete. The quest to resolve these conflicting interpretations has led to numerous studies and collaborative efforts among international space agencies. Advanced computer simulations now attempt to recreate the observed orbital patterns using known physical laws. These simulations, while successful in explaining many of the anomalies, sometimes leave a small fraction of the data unaccounted for, a residual signal that whispers of a mystery still unsolved. For some researchers, this residue is enough to warrant further investigation, a call to look again at the dark corners of our orbital environment. In laboratories around the world, teams of scientists continue to pore over decades-old data alongside cutting-edge observations. They compare archival radar echoes with new imagery captured by state-of-the-art satellites, seeking any correlation that might definitively identify the enigmatic object. In one recent study, researchers reanalyzed a set of declassified images and found that, when adjusted for the known limitations of the equipment of the time, certain features of the object remained statistically significant. While these findings are far from conclusive, they add another brushstroke to the intricate portrait of a mystery that refuses to fade with time. Throughout this process, the legacy of the Black Knight satellite endures as a symbol of the unknown. It stands not only as a collection of technical data, but as a testament to humanity's insatiable desire to understand our place in the cosmos. The evidence, fragmented and ambiguous as it may be, invites us to question our assumptions. It challenges us to consider that in the vast, uncharted reaches of space, there may be remnants of a past, or even messages from a future, that defy the simple explanations of conventional science. As we examine the evidence in ever greater detail, the interplay between advanced technology and the limitations of historical data creates a narrative rich with both clarity and contradiction. Each declassified document, each re-examined radar reading, reinforces the idea that the Black Knight satellite is more than just a relic of misinterpreted space debris. It is a focal point of our collective curiosity, a silent enigma that beckons us to look beyond the obvious and embrace the mystery that still lingers in the void. In every unexplained signal, every anomalous reading lies an invitation, a call to question, to investigate, and to wonder at the unfathomable vastness of the universe. The story of the Black Knight satellite is not merely a chronicle of technical data or historical oddities. It is a living mystery, one that continues to spark debate and inspire a relentless quest for answers. As our investigation deepens, the boundary between myth and science becomes ever more intricate. We turn our attention to the realm of expert analysis, where state-of-the-art technology, rigorous methodologies, and decades of experience converge to challenge long-held assumptions. In laboratories and control rooms across the globe, a new generation of scientists is re-examining the mysterious signals and ambiguous images that have fueled the Black Knight legend for so long. Today's space agencies, armed with high-resolution imaging, advanced radar arrays, and powerful computer simulations, are capable of scrutinizing every inch of our orbital environment. Modern instruments can detect objects as small as a few centimeters, charting their trajectories with incredible precision. Yet even with these technological marvels at our disposal, a small fraction of the data continues to defy explanation. This enduring anomaly has ignited a passionate debate among experts. Are these signals simply artifacts of space debris and early misinterpretations? Or do they hint at a presence that transcends the boundaries of conventional science? Dr. Elena Ramirez, an astrophysicist at a leading research institute, explains, "Our current technology allows us to observe and track nearly every piece of human-made debris. What remains puzzling are the few signals and images that persistently appear with an orbital periodicity that isn't easily explained by random chance." Her measured tone reflects both the excitement and the caution that characterizes modern scientific inquiry. When we overlay decades of archival data with contemporary observations, we find that while most anomalies can be correlated with known objects, there remains a residual pattern, a sort of rhythmic echo, that some believe points to something more intentional. This pattern, observed in both radio frequencies and optical imagery, has been meticulously re-examined using sophisticated computer models. Researchers simulate the gravitational influences, solar radiation pressures, and orbital perturbations that affect objects in low Earth orbit. These models have proven remarkably successful in accounting for the erratic behavior of space junk, thermal blankets from defunct satellites, discarded rocket components, and other remnants of past missions. Yet there is a subset of data that stubbornly resists such tidy categorization. In multiple independent studies, a few signals appear to follow a stable, repeating pattern. Although some argue that these might be the result of overlapping debris or even reflection anomalies, a vocal minority contends that they could be indicative of an object whose trajectory is too consistent to be mere chance. Aerospace engineer Michael Chen, who spent over 3 decades in satellite operations, recalls the excitement and unease of his early career. "I remember a particular night when our tracking system picked up an object that didn't correspond to any known satellite. At first, we chalked it up to sensor noise. But as the nights went by, the object reappeared in nearly the same orbital path. With improved data coming in, it forced us to ask, could we be witnessing something that wasn't just space debris?" Chen's recollections, shared during a roundtable discussion with fellow engineers, are imbued with the same blend of skepticism and wonder that continues to characterize the debate. Adding another layer to the discussion are the re-examined radio transmissions recorded during the 1960s. These signals, once dismissed as interference or overlapping frequencies from terrestrial sources, have been reanalyzed using modern signal processing techniques. Some independent researchers have found that portions of these transmissions display a repetition, a kind of digital cadence that some interpret as a coded message. "I'm not saying it's proof of extraterrestrial communication," cautions Dr. Ramirez, "but it certainly raises questions about the origin of these signals and whether we've been too quick to dismiss them as mere noise." Yet, the scientific community remains divided. Many experts emphasize that the vast majority of the earlier anomalies have been convincingly explained by improvements in detection equipment and data analysis methods. They point out that even in the early days of the space age, our instruments were far less sophisticated than those available today. "It's entirely plausible," notes Professor David Lin, a specialist in orbital dynamics, "that what we once interpreted as mysterious could be attributed to the limitations of our early sensors. Calibration errors, thermal effects, and even atmospheric conditions could produce the kind of signals that were later woven into the legend of the Black Knight." Despite these rational explanations, the allure of the unexplained endures. The possibility that an object with an unorthodox orbital pattern exists, whether it be a misinterpreted piece of debris or an intentional artifact, continues to capture the imagination of both the scientific community and the public. In conferences and symposiums, debates over the Black Knight often evoke a mix of rigorous technical analysis and philosophical inquiry. What does it mean when data refuses to conform completely to our models? Is it a sign that our understanding of the orbital environment is incomplete? Or could it be a subtle indication of an anomaly that has persisted through the ages? In recent collaborative studies between international space agencies, teams have pooled their resources to cross-reference archival data with new observations. Using advanced imaging satellites equipped with state-of-the-art sensors, these teams have re-observed the regions of space where the mysterious signals were originally detected. In several cases, modern imagery reveals faint, dark objects that are difficult to distinguish from the backdrop of countless other debris. But even here, a few characteristics seem to stand out: an unusual shape, a consistent brightness variation, or a subtle periodicity in its motion. While many of these observations can be attributed to known phenomena, the persistence of these features has kept the debate alive. One compelling theory proposed by a small group of researchers is that the object might be a relic, perhaps a fragment of a once operational satellite that, for reasons not entirely understood, appears to follow a deliberate orbit. Others entertain the possibility that it could be an object of non-terrestrial origin, placed in orbit during a time when our planet was the subject of observation by an advanced civilization. The truth, Professor Lin asserts, is that we are at the frontier of our knowledge. Every mysterious and filled with unanswered questions. Our journey has taken us from the early days of tantalizing signals and shadowy images through decades of scientific investigation and heated debate to the cutting-edge analyses of today. Now, in this final chapter, we reflect on what we have uncovered, the enduring enigma that is the Black Knight satellite, and the implications of this mystery for our understanding of the universe. The evidence we've examined over these segments is as compelling as it is perplexing. For decades, our instruments, both primitive and modern, have recorded faint echoes and fleeting images that hint at a presence in our orbital neighborhood that defies easy categorization. From the cryptic radio signals once intercepted by visionaries like Nikola Tesla to the recurring radar patterns noted by early satellite trackers, every fragment of data has added a brushstroke to an ever-evolving portrait of an anomaly. Yet, despite advancements in technology and analytical techniques, the Black Knight continues to elude a definitive explanation. In the realm of science, every anomaly is an invitation, a challenge to expand our knowledge and refine our methods. When state-of-the-art instruments pick up patterns that seem to defy the expected behavior of known debris, our collective curiosity is sparked. We've seen how modern high-resolution imaging and sophisticated orbital simulations have demystified many early misinterpretations, yet there remains a residual signal, a whisper in the data that suggests there is still more than meets the eye. This residual is the heartbeat of the mystery, a silent cadence that some insist indicates a purposeful presence rather than mere cosmic clutter. The debate among experts remains fervent. On one side, we have the proponents of conventional explanations, those who assert that every irregularity can ultimately be attributed to human error, technological limitations, or the chaotic dynamics of space debris. On the other, a dedicated cadre of researchers and enthusiasts contends that certain characteristics, the consistent orbital periodicity, the subtle yet structured radio pulses, the enigmatic silhouettes captured in declassified images, cannot be so easily dismissed. They argue that these data points may hint at a relic from a past era of exploration, or even an object placed intentionally in our orbit by an intelligence not of our own making. This duality, the collision of scientific skepticism with the allure of the extraordinary, has defined the Black Knight satellite's legacy. It is a narrative that transcends the simple dichotomy of fact versus fiction, inviting us instead to consider the broader human quest for meaning. What does it say about us as a species that we are so captivated by the unknown. The very act of looking upward, of questioning the seemingly empty darkness, is an expression of our deepest desires, to find connection, to unravel the mysteries of existence, and to grasp something greater than ourselves. Culturally, the Black Night has become a symbol of that unyielding quest. In literature, film, and art, it embodies the intersection of fear and wonder, a reminder that the universe, for all its vastness and apparent order, remains a place of infinite possibilities and hidden truths. The legend resonates with a universal truth, that even in an era marked by scientific triumphs and technological wonders, there remain phenomena that challenge our capacity to understand. This tension between the known and the unknowable is what gives the mystery its enduring power. As we stand on the threshold of tomorrow, new technologies promise to shed even more light on this enigmatic presence. Space agencies worldwide are deploying ever more sensitive sensors and expanding our observational capabilities to realms once thought inaccessible. The next generation of satellites, equipped with advanced imaging and data processing tools, will peer into the very fabric of near-Earth space. These missions may one day provide the clarity that has long eluded us, or they might reveal even more questions than answers. In either case, the pursuit of knowledge will continue unabated. Yet there is also a profound humility that accompanies this search. For every piece of data we decode, for every anomaly we demystify, the universe reminds us that it is far more complex and mysterious than our current theories can capture. The Black Knight satellite, whether it ultimately proves to be a misinterpreted artifact of human technology or an emissary from a distant past, symbolizes this humility. It is a testament to the fact that in the grand expanse of space, our understanding is but a flickering candle against the overwhelming darkness. In the quiet hours of the night, when the bustle of the world falls away and we are left alone with the silent sky, the mystery of the Black Night whispers to us. It calls on our imagination, urging us to consider that perhaps the cosmos is filled with relics of civilizations long vanished, or messages left behind by entities that once observed our planet with interest. It challenges us to remain curious, to embrace uncertainty, and to acknowledge that the pursuit of truth is an endless journey, a journey that is as much about the questions we ask as it is about the answers we hope to find. Looking back over the tapestry of evidence and speculation, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe. The Black Knight satellite is more than a curious anomaly in the annals of space exploration. It is a mirror reflecting our collective hopes, our fears, and our insatiable desire to understand the cosmos. It reminds us that science is not merely a collection of facts and figures, but a dynamic, evolving narrative that is shaped by our perceptions, our technologies, and our dreams. As our narrative draws to a close, we are left with a powerful, enduring question. What if there are still secrets lurking in the shadows of space, waiting to be discovered?